where where they were located, and that's how they hit them with the bunker buster.
Now, what was your daughter? What brought your daughter?
That's what happened.
What brought your daughter to this attention to get somebody on her? They've been trying to kill me for a few years. Started about 10 years ago, when I referred to when I put building number 7 on the cover of my nationally distributed Free American magazine, and I referred to it on the air as an exaggerated case of Jewish lightning. I don't think the Mossad liked that, so they tried to kill me.
Well, I understand, and I wish I could tell you that this was something with hideous political significance, but really, you see, I had known, the reason that she knew John was because many, many, many years before, he'd been my boyfriend, and we'd stayed friends, I thought. And then I'd actually heard that I wasn't talking to my daughter at the time, for good and sufficient reasons. This is like in early 1999, and I'd heard a rumor that they were in a relationship, and I thought John would never do anything so inappropriate as to get into a relationship with the daughter of an old girlfriend. That would be very bad for him politically if it came out. And at that point, I was very politically, active in the Republican Party. I was actually a regent for the National Coalition of Family Justice, so I called him up and I said, I've heard this bizarre rumor, and I'm just calling to let you know that this is out there, and ask if you know where it might have originated. And he said, no. I would never do anything like that. That would be just completely unthinkable. And so when my daughter contacted me several months later, I didn't believe her, and she and I were having an argument on the phone on the issue because she had proven herself not to be very reliable as a source of information, shall we say. When somebody was calling, you could hear the beep on the phone, and she said, hold on. And so, she got off, and eventually I hung up because I thought that, she just wasn't going to, we'd finish our conversation, and that was just her way of exiting. And she called me back and said, just listen. And I listened to a tape that you can actually access online, and it's called the Weasel Search tape, and American Politics Journal still has it up there, and she goes through all of these things, which were lies that John had told me, and, certainly proves that he was a heck of a liar and was doing exactly what he had denied, which was being in a relationship with my daughter, forcing her to have an abortion, telling her the most outrageous lies you can possibly imagine, and you can just go listen. And I was outraged, and I called him and I said, John, I cannot believe you've lied to me like this. And then he hung up on me, blocked my calls, refused to accept my emails. So what I did is 90 seconds later, there was a fax on its way to him at the Wall Street Journal, which is where he was working. He was on the editorial staff there for 18 years. And I was told later that it was probably copied at least 5 times because they had the central fax, which I knew. That's why I sent it. And that's how it got out. Now, he had been in line to get a job in the Bush White House as a speechwriter. He did not get it. His consolation prize was writing the book about election fraud. But that's why they needed it. If you see what I mean?
Well, what year were you involved in the Republican Party, approximately?
From 1988, when I left the Libertarian Party, until I sort of left it finally in about 2004. And I was very involved. I had tea in the White House with Laura Bush.
In 1996, I worked in the with a presidential candidate. The first Republican to sign up for the presidency race in 1996. His name was Charles Collins. But nobody ever knew about Charles, because at every Republican convention, when Charles got up to tell the Republicans we could buy back the Federal Reserve, wipe out a $6 trillion at the time debt to the Federal Reserve, He wanted to do exactly what Kennedy did with Executive Order 11110. Every time he got up to speak, every cameraman on stage turned their cameras off, pointed them at the ground, and in 2 states they unplugged his microphone.
Isn't it annoying the kinds of things they pull and get away with? That they're not getting away with as much as they used to, of course. Now, things are changing for them, for the better for us.
I hope so. I've been fighting these bastards for 20 years. I started the militias in 1994. They try to tell you that like it's a bad thing. They just don't tell you I did it in the governor's office. Governor in New Mexico, who ran on the Libertarian Party for president a couple of years ago, Gary Johnson.
So that was Gary Johnson, yeah.
And
yeah.
So it's I kind of got discouraged after going from Maine to California with all the Republicans, listening to John McCain. Yeah, my son's an engineer. I don't care if all the factories move to Mexico. And of course, John McCain is now hanging out and promoting every rebel group out there, Al Qaeda in Syria and just about everywhere else.
Well, he has to do something for a living, for goodness sakes. And being a flack for whoever the administration or whoever the corporations are in charge right then is his thing. I mean, he may be actually getting a direct check from Koch Industries. Who knows?
It's something I refer to the Republicans and the Democrats as 2 wings of the same bird. And the bird's a global vulture. It's not an eagle. It's not an eagle. Not anywhere close.
Well, they very much are. That, and people, they think that they believe that these things are real. They don't understand that this is like a play, like a wag the dog being put on to distract us so that we don't actually accomplish what needs to be done, which is to turn off the spigot, drown and stop paying money out to the corporations and take back our country by going back to the way that it used to be, which is independence, real independence. Independence that means that you don't have to spend 90% of your waking hours working to have the money to be able to pay the bills for things that should cost us nothing anyway, because we have the technology right now, we've had for a long time, to not have to pay anything for transportation. We can have houses that can last 16,000 years, and I'm not exaggerating. I can send you to one of my sites, and you can read about it and watch a video on this material. And once you don't have to pay these people, your life's blood, then we'll have our independence back, because we come from people who were doing what? They weren't paying other people. They weren't paying corporations for things to live. They were living happy, healthy lives, very involved in their communities, and focused on where we live and where we actually have control. Because once you get up to the higher levels, you don't have any control. It's all just a wag the dog to keep you occupied.
Well,
pick your pocket.
In the I have, after they I tried to kill me, I lost the Free American for about 9 years. I brought that back online, and I've just done a couple of stories in this January 1st issue that's coming up about Iceland. I mean, they kicked the bankers out. They put the bankers in jail in Iceland.
I loved it. That was fantastic. Yes.
And they've done something that we ought to do here, and that we actually have done here in a couple of states. Down in Uruguay, they've legalized marijuana, and I've told people it ain't about marijuana, it's about hemp. That was our #1 cash crop in the 30s. They put hemp fields on the back of $10 bills in 1914, Our flag was made out of hemp. Our Constitution was written on hemp paper. The Encyclopedia Britannica, they were printed for 100 years on hemp paper, and then suddenly hemp turned into marijuana, and it was outlawed in this country. But you can still get 10,000 products made out of hemp if you buy it from communist China.
Yes, and it's so wrong. I mean, kudos to Colorado and the other states that have legalized. And of course, I'm particularly delighted with Colorado because it went all the way to freedom.
That's right. And, you know, I've told people that if a man with a badge can walk up to you and say, what's that in your pocket? Does that marijuana I smell? Oh, you're going to jail. You live in a police state. You live in a police state, and we need to abolish all the laws against victimless crimes. We need to the foundation of every civilization is the self-sufficient family farm. And I've told people for the last 20 years, anytime a communist regime takes over a country, they go after 3 classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself. Plank number 9 on the Communist Manifesto is corporate farms. Can you say Monsanto? And then second, they go after the intelligentsia. That's anybody that's smart enough to know what the hell they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and law enforcement that might be still loyal to the old regime. That would be us oath keepers. The people that realize there's no expiration date on that oath we took. I took mine when I was 17. And they've certainly done that. They're doing that now. They're going after the veterans. They're drugging them. They're drugging our old folks. And of course they don't call television programming for nothing. They don't want you being independent. They don't want you being self-sufficient. You could go to jail for growing a marijuana plant in your backyard. Today you can go to jail for growing a friggin' tomato. So it's just.
That's for sure. Absolutely.
Now, tell me, let's talk a little bit more about this drone thing. Obviously, you and I are on the same page here, and I've asked.
We haven't done anything to disagree about. We're being boring, right?
No, not with me. It's nice to find somebody that does agree with what I'm saying, because most people, again, I tell them, you know, that they don't call television programming for nothing. They want you to believe a certain way, and I keep thinking of the old song, how you gonna get them back on the farm after they've seen L.A. or after they've seen Paris. You know, it's
yes.
It is actually happening. It is actually happening that people are starting to go back to growing gardens in their front yard or their backyard. They're trying to become more self-sufficient. And I've told people, if you, I call it my.
It's amazing. It's happening all across the country. Yeah.
I call it my Liberty Village concept. If you can grow your own food and generate your own power from everything God gave us, the wind and the sun, you can turn your house into an income-producing machine simply by putting solar on the roof, putting a windmill on the roof. And if you grow food instead of grass, you don't need the government or the banks for anything.
And that scares them horribly. Which is, of course, they want to own our homes. Which is, if they figured out, they love it when they can come up with several ways to simultaneously screw us over. And that's what they did, of course, with the securitized derivatives and the mortgage fiasco.
The new scam is these people are going around and buying all of the foreclosed houses, all of these homes that have been foreclosed on, and they're basically becoming landlords. They're going to they want you to rent that house from you, and basically we're already doing that. I have information that these our whole debts were paid off, and that $2 trillion that Bush gave the bankers, you will never be able to pay the interest on that $2 trillion that he handed to the people that printed the money. He gave it back to them. That would have paid off every mortgage in this country, and I believe all those mortgages have been paid off a long time ago. Matter of fact,
well,
B.K.
yes,
Durham.
they did that several different ways. They melt us in every way you can imagine.
Well, maybe the Jews are right when they refer to us as goyim or kettle, you know?
Well, it's certainly highly psychopathic, you know, that attitude. And, you know, you have to kind of pause and wonder, you know, how many, because they're certainly not all that way, but the ones that behave that way, you have to wonder about what they're really all about and whether or not they actually have, you know, what their neurobiology is like. Because now we know about psychopathy that it's actually a neurological condition. It isn't morals. They don't have any. It is simply a neurological condition. So they don't have empathy and they don't have a conscience, which makes it very easy for them to behave in this fashion.
That's it. You know, they talk about post-traumatic stress syndrome in soldiers, and they use that as an excuse to give them drugs, to drug them. I said, you know, to me, if you've been to Vietnam, if you've been to Iraq, if you've been to Afghanistan, and you've been forced to kill innocent people, and you come back here and you don't have post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is really not a disease at all, it's called a conscience.
Yes.
If you don't have a conscience,
they say, "Oh, congratulations! We want you to be law enforcement, and here's a gun. Shoot them."
That's right. That's right. We the people that you know were questioned and asked if they would fire on American citizens. The ones that said no are the ones that went to Iraq or Afghanistan or Vietnam. You know, they send them over there, and they make money off it. If you're killed over there in action, you know, you can bet that somebody's got an insurance policy on you, making money off of your death.
Yes, absolutely. You know, they have the whole system, you know, absolutely frozen solid that way, which is one of the reasons that, one, we need to do the forensics, and then we need to take action to make sure that it stops. And we can do that when in all populations, this is, you know, herd animals, they don't, you know, after studying herd animals for years, they found out that they make joint decisions. And they don't know exactly what the mechanism is, but an animal will change its direction and point to a different direction. And as soon as 30 to 40% of the animals are pointing in the same direction, they all immediately take off in the same direction. And, you know, in human beings, you know, there's very stable percentages in this population that, you know, are willing to actually innovate. 5% of the people will try anything new once to see if it works. 15% will try something new if they're desperate. 60% will, when they see that everybody else is doing it, then they will try it. And 20%, I call them the Pompeii contingent. They just have to die. They're never going to change. So we can discount them. So, but now what's happening is we're way past 20% and we're moving into, I would say, 25% of the people who are aware, and they're muttering and they don't know what to do. And so we're sort of in a race, that percentage, because the moment it reaches the tipping point, it's unstoppable.
Well, that is what they're afraid of.
What we need to do is take it down into the mainstream.
You're exactly right, and that's what I tried to do 20 years ago when I started the Free American magazine. This was kind of an extension because I did underground magazine during Vietnam. I didn't go to Vietnam. I volunteered, but I didn't go, and I actually made a living, pretty good living, off of selling peace symbols back in the 60s. It's
Wow.
and I started the I had underground magazines. I had Solomon's Herald, and then in '94 I started the Free American because I was so disgusted with the way our press, our free press, covered what happened at Waco. I mean, they wanted you to somehow believe that it was okay to kill 13 or 17 little children to protect them from a child molester that had never been even tried, much less, and they killed their families and they killed the children, and somehow that was supposed to be okay. We were supposed to say it's okay for our government to do that. I didn't think so, and so I started the magazine and the militias. But we have made a difference. We are waking people up. You know, even I talked about the self-sufficient family farm 20, almost 15 years ago, and I've had people call me up and say, you know, Clay, I did what you suggested. My husband and I went out and we bought this little farm, old farm, and we've been growing our own food, and we got solar out here, and we're happy. We're happy. So we have had an effect. I have had an effect here, and I think the elite, whatever you want to call them, and frankly, I think we've got something. I think they're jealous of us. I think we got something they don't have. I think we got a soul, and
Yes,
their
we
soul
definitely
is
have
our
souls,
conscience.
and they don't. I think that they're actually demons.
Yes, ma'am. I agree with that. And let's see, I've even got it. I've got a book out. They don't want you to read. It's called Mystery Babylon. And on the cover, it said 2,000 years ago, the Bible told us of the coming of the New World Order as the eighth beast, told us about the mark of the beast, and warned us about the Jews who say they're Jews but are not.
Yes, absolutely, because they aren't. They're actually Ashkenazi.
That's right. And that was exposed in the first magazine that in my newly revived Free American, by a Jewish historian by the name of Benjamin Friedman, who said the so-called Jews, they have never been there. They're Ashkenazi. They came from the Black Sea area of Russia, and they're still attacking the white Christians. They killed 60 million white Christian Russians. The Russians were never our enemies. The government was.
Amen.
And you know, they're trying to do the same thing to demonize Americans. Ayn Rand kind of had it right when she said the government has no control over honest citizens, so they have to make criminals out of us. And that's what the drug laws are about. That's what the banking laws are about. It's
and that's why, of course, they've done this privatization thing with the prisons, because they can make money while they're doing it. And I have to tell you that I am horrified that the whole concept of privatization came from the libertarian movement.
well, I was barred from speaking at the libertarian events, and I've been pushing for the legalization. I helped start NORML. I started the whole paraphernalia industry. I had the first head shops in Texas, and but I wasn't allowed to speak at the libertarian parties. Probably still aren't, because
Who was it? Who stopped you from speaking? I want to know what the names were.
I don't know. I don't know. I just was disinvited to any of these libertarian events because basically I was telling people on the air.
Was that national? Was that a national event?
Yes, ma'am.
What year?
It was about 96. I'd been working with the presidential candidates in the Republican Party, and Charles was supposed to, we tried to get him into some libertarian events, and they wouldn't let us, because I kept saying, wait a minute, you want open borders? you know, yeah, come on in and eat my food, steal my money, and you know, no, I'm not going to go along with that. That means your libertarian party has been infiltrated. You know, that's a
Well, it was taken over by the Kochs in 1980.
taken over by what?
The Kochs. K-O-C-H. The Koch brothers.
Oh yes,
Charles
okay,
and David.
okay. I never got to meet them. I don't can't speak about them knowledgeably, but
Well, I met them at the National Convention in '79 at the Bonaventure, and you know, I had nice, charming conversations with both of them. David he's an okay dancer. He stutters, but you know, I know the whole backstory there because I dug it out. I like to know exactly what's really going on. It's one of the reasons I left the LP, because how could I stay when I realized, you know, how they were being, you know, used against freedom?
well, they infiltrate everything. You know, when people would call me up and say, "Well, Clay, do you know a militia I could join?" I said, "Well, listen, if you join a militia and there's more than 10 people in the militia, and you haven't known the other 9 your whole life, one of them is a plant trying to set you up." And that's what they do. That's the only reason. I used to really wonder, Melinda, you know, why would they be so upset about an old biker? I mean, I'm just an old biker from Texas. You know, done a lot of controversial things. Been certainly had an influence. Helped Keith Stroop start Normal back in the '60s, and started the whole head shop industry. Sold every head shop in the country at one time or another. But it's you know, I'm still just an old biker, man. I've been riding for my whole life. I've been on 2 wheelers with a motor most of my life, and but that's one of the things that they feared. That's one of the things they feared. This is why the bikers with Hollywood, they've tried to make us into the bad guys somehow. The biker movies. Oh, see, those bikers are all drug dealers. They're all this. They're all that. They're all this. They're dangerous. They're dangerous. That's because we're organized and real hard to infiltrate the Hells Angels or the Banditos. Hard to infiltrate that. They can still do it. They can still do it, and they do it, but they're afraid of us. It's an organization, and we ain't going to be pushed around, you know. I don't like bullies, and, you know, I never started a fight, but I'll finish one every time. That's something that they're afraid of. And the same thing about the militias, the same thing about the veterans, same thing about Christian identity. You know, any religion they don't control, they're afraid of. And you know, to me, it's about my Constitution. It's about my Bill of Rights. That's really that's what our founding fathers gave us, and that's even more powerful than the Constitution. The Constitution is supposed to put change on governments, but they've altered it so much that it's basically they're hiding behind it the same way they hide behind the Jewish people when they're you know, trying to start the wars and do the false flags and like 9/11 and like the Lavon affair and everything else.
Well, they do. You always can assume that is their agenda, because centralizing and controlling is, I mean, you can see this extension all the way from back into taking Christianity for an example. They took over, you know, Emperor Constantine basically took over Christianity and created it as a hierarchy when it had been a flat network, very much on the kind of model that we're talking about returning to. They realized they had a direct spiritual relationship with Christ, that he was in them and part of them, and they lived their theology. They loved one another. They cared for one another. When pagans were ill during plagues because they had plagues constantly in those first few centuries, as they had later. And to everybody they could reach, pagans who had been abandoned by their families, who would run away, they nursed them. They gave them rudimentary, what was available to them. They gave them food, liquid, and kept them warm and clean. And this is one of the reasons that so many people converted to Christianity, because that was something, that security and knowing that somebody cared about them and treated them with love, was something that appeals to every human being. We want that for ourselves, and we want it for the other people that we care about.
I've said, and this may be true, may not be, that the Council of Nicaea, they promoted Jesus to God because they didn't want men like me aspiring to be the kind of man he was. And let's see, the Bible tells us we're not supposed to worship graven images. What do you call that figure hanging on that cross, on the instrument of torture they used to kill him with? I say that's a graven image. I say that's trying to show
it's
him.
Definitely graven, and it's definitely an image, yes. And of course, many Christians use it. I don't know exactly when the use of it actually, became common, but Constantine held the Nicene Council at his lake house and was there the whole time, making sure they did what he wanted them to do. He had, he absolutely, had decided what the Nicene Creed was going to say. And they then, of course, that same, not at that meeting, but in later meetings, they decided what was going to be in the Bible, what was going to be in the Apocrypha, what was decided was going to be considered to be heresy. And that wasn't at all what Christianity was about. It was about free individuals deciding for themselves, reaching out to others in love, and creating community, which is always within Christ.
And Jesus told us, you can do what I do and more. What he told us. What he told us is that God is within us, and we don't need the priest, we don't need the bankers, we don't need the money changers. And when I think of Jesus, I think of Jesus taking a whip and running the money changers out of the temple. That's not exactly the image of Christ they want to, the Catholic Church and their minions want to project, and that's why they didn't want us to read it.
He did that.
What's that?
He did that.
Yes.
He did that. Absolutely.
That's my kind of savior. That's my role model right there, and that's what I intend to do. I want to run the bankers out of our country. I want to do what Iceland did. I want to bring the self-sufficient family farm back. If you got a 5-acre farm, grow hemp on it. I don't care whether it's the female plant or the male plant. I don't care whether you want to smoke it or whether you want to make fabric out of it. If you want to make paper out of it,
If you want to make plastic out of it or food.
Yeah, let's build a Ford. Let's build a Ford with it. Let's build a Ford. You can hit it with a sledgehammer, and the sledgehammer will bounce off. Henry Ford did that.
He did, and that was, of course, one of the reasons that they decided that they were going to go after hemp, because hemp would have so radically reduced the cost of so many related products and kept the power in the people. And they've done everything they can to end that. But we are now in the end times, I believe. But the end times, I think, are very different than we thought they were. Because I think that the message is, we have to save ourselves. God gave us all the tools, and we need to go fight this fight using the means that are in our hands, and those means are very powerful. One of the most powerful means for fighting is the economy, because we can actually take the economy and use it as a weapon, and we should do that in all of the different ways to get us off the grid and back into community with each other in Christ.
Now, I believe that too. And You know, I've kind of got the theory here that hold on just a minute here. Hold on just a minute. I'll be right back. Dave, cover for me here. Be right back. Hello.
Yeah, this is Vincent of Bono Email.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to find the road that you're located on.
It's
Lane
Road.
Road.
Lane Road, yes, sir. It's Lane Road out of Seadrift, about 4, 5, 6 miles.
4, 6 miles Lane Road.
Yeah, you pass. There's a community on the left called the Lakes, and then the road's right past that. There'll be some billboards on the left-hand side, and an old shell of a building on the right, and it'll say Lane Road. Turn right there. Go down to about mile and a half, and you'll see Lane Road RV. You'll see a red building on the right. Turn right before you get to that red building, and the driveway will curve around, and you'll be facing my trailer. The trailer says Free American.
Okay. All right, then, sir.
Okay, be waiting for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay,
And,
I'm back.
I had a VA doctor say, well, you have to go on this drug. I said, take all that rest of the pharmaceuticals and put them where the light don't shine. He said, well, we're going to take you off your disability. I said, if you do, you disappear. Your choice. That's not a threat. That's not a promise. That's a consequence for your stupidity.
Well, if you want to embrace your PTSD and use it that way, that's certainly your choice.
Well, here's the thing. I had a dream 4 nights in a row where I was sitting in my front porch, and this big old coyote comes limping up to my gate. And I said, Coyote, what's wrong with you? And he looks at me, looks at his paw, says, come here, let me fix that for you. And after a few minutes, he limped in, and I pulled out this big thorn out of his paw. I said, as long as you stay here beside me, you're safe. And then when I looked over the gate, I couldn't see anything except it's all white. Well, I realized that there was still some mind control going on. So now when I look out over that gate, what do I see? I see a forest that goes forever with a big medieval village, with a big castle in the distance. Someday I'll go out there and investigate that castle. In my mind. But right now I'm too busy running Little Spirit Radio.
Well, and that's a fine thing for you to be doing, too. But, you know, everybody has their own approach to life and has their own approach to their journey, their spiritual journey, and that's yours. There isn't any right or wrong with it. It just is.
Thank you.
I'm back here. I'll have you cover for me in a minute here. My guy's coming out to fix my roof. Had to get directions.
Oh, well, that's important.
Yeah, it is. I'm tired of running around with a pot trying to stop the leaks. You know, they tried to kill me in 2004. They tapped my phones, and they arranged an accident. When the accident didn't kill me, they kept me drugged for 3 months. They fed me Halcyon, Haldol, Valium, and morphine for 3 months. And they told my family, make sure he takes this medication. Make sure he takes this Depakote. I said, I read the contraindications. I'm not taking any more medicine. And I never did before, and I won't do it again. I told them, I said, the only thing I need is a joint and a Harley. Leave me alone. And I don't do pharmaceuticals. I think that is the way they try to kill us. And that's the way they try to control us.
They have lots of alternatives, though.
Yes, GMO foods are what if you here, eat this corn that the rats won't eat, but we can feed it to your children.
Yes.
And of course, they wrote it in stone.
Attractive idea.
They wrote it in stone, and the Georgia Guidestones. They want to reduce the world population to a manageable 500 million, and I think that's part of our public policy, and this is of course, why we have the wars. I mean, they fund both sides. They funded Russia. They gave Russia the nuclear weapons so we'd have an enemy, so we could have a Cold War. And did the same thing with Vietnam. Same thing with there was no Gulf of Tonkin incident anymore. There was any weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
Well, that's their business plan. Actually, I have a website about that. It's called greenville.biz.
Gringo?
Greenville.
Greenville.
Because Greenville, the number of people who actually benefit from what they're doing is only about 100,000 people, and that's about the size of Santa Barbara. So Greenville is exactly the same size as Santa Barbara, more or less. And the Greenville business plan just shows you exactly, if you understand what they're really about and what their intentions really are, then it's much easier to do something about it. It's very hard to do it if you don't understand what they're really all about. But once you get what the business plan is, you go, oh, I got it. I call it the short name for the long game because they've been doing it for so long. And I designed a game called Greenville that takes you from 1913, right before Christmas, and we all know what that date is. That was the date they started to do the Fed, and to present day. You get 2 lifetimes, and to win,
Nope, say it like that. You broke up on me. Good. Repeat that. Repeat that, Melinda.
You have to win. To win, you have to be on the secret. Because that's who wins, right? It's all about even with them. They're like scorpions in a bottle. It isn't like they really cooperate. When you get up to the top level of the corporate world, they're always trying to maneuver and find out how they can get more. They're never satisfied. They never will be. Because that's what they're all about. They're psychopathic.
Now, this the main thing on dronefreezone.info. And I've just saw the drone strikes in Yemen on bombing weddings and families. But you talk about this drone team that includes your ex-husband. What?
It did, but I got him fired. He's actually now, though they're going into business with him on another business that he has started called Firefly. And I'm going to be very curious to see what kind of success he gets on that. I haven't really started publicizing all the relationships there yet, but I will. Because I think you have to turn the light on, click, and then when people see who they're really dealing with, then they understand what the business plan is going to be, even if it looks like a good deal going in.
Well,
because these people are very consistent.
You talk about on your mission here that this is a national effort with chapters starting around the country and across the world. You know, and really,
Yes,
I mean,
right.
everything that you're doing here, I've tried to do. Everybody rises to their own level of incompetence. I've said mine might be the internet. I've been, you know, I'm kind of old school. You know, I started publishing with an X-Acto knife and rubber cement, and
So did I.
you know, and I wrote my first novel sitting in a Texas prison with a little portable typewriter. Matter of fact, I just got that retyped and put into a computer so I can edit it. And I started as a science fiction book, a science fiction novel 45 years ago about the United States after 46 states did what Colorado did. They abolished all laws against victimless crimes and had a really free society. 4 states kept the old style laws, the old system, the prisons, and so this turned into an adventure novel about breaking people out of a Texas prison. That It was supposed to be, it was science fiction at the time, but now we got 20 states that you can actually smoke a joint without going to prison. And I'm not advocating the whole medical marijuana thing, because I think that's a joke. That's the way the pharmaceuticals and the doctors keep their hand in our pocket. Well,
well, they wanted, it was, yeah, and the people who proposed it did so to make it acceptable so they could get it passed, but I know that everybody's hoping to move further along that line.
Now, how do we change this? I started the militias, I started the magazine, and I started this radio show 20 years ago.
We really come together, and we have to, because there's a lot of parallel efforts, and we need to bring them together and consolidate, but without being a hierarchy. It needs to be a network, so that they have a much harder time of getting control of the network. And because if everybody has access to the information and we remain proactive and doing what works, and then we have a chance of doing it. And so that's the model I use. And by using that model, one of the things that's happened to me, and I've always looked at it as a growth experience, many people have stolen my work and gone off and used it for their own purposes. Sometimes those were good purposes, and sometimes I was horrified, just horrified. Like, you know that the whole, what Newt Gingrich claims is his, which is Contract on America, that was actually something I started, and it was called the Freedom Pledge, and it was to enact accountability in elected officials by forcing them to sign up to guarantee that they wouldn't do certain things and that there would be transparency. And I did a brochure, took it to the Republican Convention in California in 1992, 93, and I gave a copy to John, and it wasn't until years later, John Fund, that I realized, because somebody asked me, that because he had told them that he had gotten the idea from me. And I was like, oh. Because, of course, what they had done was they'd taken out all the transparency and accountability and used it in a way that completely horrified me. Completely. Because it was so wrong.
Well,
so you have to be careful about that.
I said one of the problems about patriots, and I may be guilty of this too, this whole patriot movement, is that we're all so independent that we just can't work together. It's like herd and catch.
Well, you need to work together, and I think one of the solutions for that is that I know actually a lot of patriot types who can work together, but they're otherly gendered. Women have an easier time doing that, working with each other.
Well, I've also said one of the problems that I've got is how do you promote yourself without coming off like a conceited asshole,
It's tough, isn't it?
I'm Clay Douglas. I'm really smart. I've been doing this for a long time. And no, that don't work. But I'm also operating under a kind of a strange thing. I'm blocked in libraries. You can't go into Office Depot and get the Free American on your computer. They have blocked me in libraries and major corporations, and so I'm just trying to get the information out. I've been doing this radio show for 20 years. When I had national distribution for the magazine, stop it. When I had national distribution for the magazine, and I was on worldwide shortwave, and I had subscribers and I had a budget, I was really making an impact. After the accident, all of that just disappeared. Just disappeared. I had one of my magazines sold for $500,000. I still retained half of it, 50% of it, to a publicly traded corporation. We went on, we signed a contract on Thursday. They put a press release out on Friday, and Monday I walked into the office. The CEO was white and shaking. I can't go through with it, Clay. my stock's crashing. I can't go through with it.
Well, that was probably intentional. They do that sort of thing.
Yes, ma'am. So the I think you've got an
But
opportunity.
that's why you have to. That's why you need to do these things. And I am persuaded that one of the essential elements that the movement always loses is humor. You have to become the equivalent of Jon Stewart, because that's how that is really driving now. That is where, if you really want political information, that's where you go. It might look like humor, but we all know that, oh, that's really racist information. Yes, you can rely on that information, and that's where we need to be in the marketplace. And we can start online doing it. I've got several different approaches that I am looking at and trying to get up there and going. One of them is, I think I mentioned to you, Take It to the People, which is a proposed TV show to start online that takes people's stories and lets people tell them to a jury of, of people who identify as, it's not, a formal jury, but it's a jury that where they render their decision of what they think is right and should happen in that case.
Well,
and then if things are suggested that could be done to cause these people more unhappiness and woe, not the victims, but the people who, did it. And I've been experimenting with it, and it seems to work because people hate being outed. They just hate it. It's embarrassing. If people at their club know about it, it's like, oh my God, I saw you online, or I got this brochure about you, I got this card about you, and they don't like it. But it's First Amendment, it's political, so it's really hard to stop.
Well, people are waking up. People are waking up, and with me, what they tried to do with me is basically kill any source of income that I had. Now, 3 months ago, I started putting the Free American back up online, not paying for paper, not paying for printing, not paying for ink. I'm just doing it as a PDF file, and you can get it for $2.99. And we've got enough stories in every issue that are really from so many different angles. What I think happens with people, they get locked onto one thing. Well, it's the chemtrails. Well, I did a video on chemtrails 20 years ago. It still sells. And I did, I did the True Face of FEMA 10 years ago. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting. And it's just as relevant today as it was when I filmed it, because they're saying this is when FEMA was rolled into Homeland Security. Or in case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, we'll need 400,000 well-armed, well-trained, organized, disciplined troops to control the American people, because some of them just won't follow orders. You need 400,000 troops to get the American people to take a vaccine for a disease that's been eradicated for 100 years in this country? I can see you might have a problem with that. So by covering these different angles and getting this information out here and putting it all together, it's not just my opinion. Here's John Comiskey. Here's Melinda. Here's talking about the drones. Here's talking about this. And you put it all together in one issue, one magazine, that you can print it off and you can pass it out to your neighbors. You can send it. You can make the copies. It's I think it's a viable way to wake people up and to show people and to organize people. Now, I've got up on my website a couple of other things too. We've got J.B. Campbell has said We are under deadly attack by federal forces, mainly the NSA, FBI, ATF, DEA, TSA, and CIA, and secret police agencies. In fact, there are 73 federal agencies that have militarized and have the license to kill us. It's time for the American Defense Party to lead the defense of whatever we have left to defend. And he has a simple plan. Here's a 3-part plan to dismantle the police state and prevent martial law. First part, neighborhood watch. Second part, civilian police review boards. Third part, bring the military into the resistance. And I think that's a good plan. My whole neighborhood watch is if you get people to work together in a neighborhood to grow food, not grass, and to put solar on their roofs, and basically they have the neighborhood watch. That's they're working together.
You know who's actually the farthest advanced on the local grow issue, including making sure that everybody can be fed from within a county, is the sustainability movement. And most of those are, you think of it on the left. But like if you go to Santa Barbara, California, and you walk down the street, there's a lot of areas. You're walking along the street in this very upscale area around $1 million homes, and you have they've got chickens. And you go and you look and you go, ooh, they've got gardens, they've got chickens. And, it's a matter of bringing everybody together. It's not like the ideas aren't out there. They are. It's, getting past this artificial divide that's been created to keep us apart and seeing that we are all one and that cooperating is not only, our survival, it's our salvation in so many different ways.
You're absolutely right, Dave.
I spent a lot of time on the left talking to those people. Then incidentally, they think I'm a leftist. I think that was really funny, but that's okay because I reject all of those, all of those limiters because I'm left, I'm right. I want everybody to come together and get past all the silliness and change it. Because that's also changing your own heart, which is one of the essential things about being a Christian. And I'm a Christian.
I am on the board of directors for Timothy Bible College and the Little Red Schoolhouse because I think we've got the computers now. You can set your kid down in front of the computer instead of playing video games. Let him study at the Little Red Schoolhouse in your home. I'm working on my master's degree on Timothy Bible College. I'm working on my master's degree on political science right now. So we've got answers to that. And by the way, it's a hell of a lot cheaper than going to an Ivy League school. And if we're educating our children from our homes, the safety of our homes, we don't have to worry about Columbines or Sandy Hooks or Aurora theaters.
Well, that's really the better way to be educated. I grew up in it's a different kind of background. Yeah, I went to school, but when I came home, the whole attitude was, well, I mean, anything any book you want to read, you can read. And we don't care how old you are, you can read that book. And that was the only rule about it. If you're old enough to pick up the book and read it, you can read the book. And my dad used to bring, when I was like 8 years old, my dad was bringing home piles of books from university so I could read them. He was a college professor at UCLA and then director of the Water Resources Center for all of the entire UC system. And then he also was on the first EPA in 1969.
Now,
but get it. So that's what you have to do. Kids will self-educate. And, I mean, I went to school, but I tell you, what I learned so much more on my own at home.
I read every science fiction book in the Fort Worth Public Library before I was 14. I read every one.
What was your first one and when did you read it?
My first one was John Carter of Mars, or Tarzan, Edgar Rice Burroughs. And then Robert A. Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison. I pretty much, I don't know, I was reading, my grandfather taught me to read. I sat on his lap and he ran his finger over comic books. He read comic books to me. So when I went into first grade, I could already read at high school levels. And I've always, if I need to know something, I pick up a book and read it. So I read every newspaper from Haaretz to Russia Today. I mean, I read everything. And that's then I choose the information that I feel like people need to know and may not have access to do my magazines. But this whole, I said my whole plan for Liberty Villages, all the Liberty Villages are there. They're already here. Let's call them small town America. If all these little towns here in Texas that are surrounded by self-sufficient family farms, I mean, that is a Liberty Village. And all you got to do is organize them and get them working together. Your whole neighborhood, one square block.
But you don't, that's the beauty. You don't need to organize themselves.
People are misdirected. Go ahead.
When people share information as equals, and they will always look for the best possible information because they'll see other people benefiting from better information and they'll want to use it.
But the program here is divide and conquer, so the mainstream media, the press, and Hollywood, they really misdirect people, and they want you to be afraid. They want you to they prey on fear.
In numbers, there is security, and when you know that there are other people out there just doing exactly the same thing you're doing, and you're starting to rebuild the common, and there's resources there for you, it's easing at the heart and mind and spirit. And
Sorry, you broke up just a little bit there.
Okay, well, I said it has to come from and on. We are strong.
Fusion centers are interfering.
Huh?
I said the fusion centers must be interfering here. We broke up a little bit, but I can hear you now.
They do that. I actually had a period when I was doing a radio show, and it would just turn off, my, phone, click, and it would be off until the show was over in about 5 minutes after, and then it would be working again. And it's like, I think what you're saying. Okay.
Now,
then I didn't have Skype. Now, of course, I would.
Yeah, you might add me on Skype, Melinda. I'm Free American 69, and that's also my YouTube. That's my Facebook, and that's my Twitter, Free American 69.
So I'll have to add you to my contacts, and then we'll be all connected. And I think we have actually interesting things we could do together.
I would like to do that. One of the things. So what happened with me is when the accident happened and the magazine went down. I mean, if I had 4,000 subscribers today, I would be a little bit more productive than I am now. I would be in better shape. And so I need help in figuring out how to set things up. if you don't have any backup, if you don't have any feedback, if you don't have any buddy that you can call up and say, well, what should we do now? I mean, I have that with Wolf Spirit here, Dave Corso. You know, that he doesn't censor me, so I can talk about anything I want here. And we're getting out. And we're getting this, the shows are being recorded. It's being recorded for YouTube. It's been recorded for, now I've got an RSS feed. And I just got that set up a couple of days ago. So somebody in Australia said, do you have an RSS feed? Well, yes, I do. Now I do. So this is what I need. And they, you know, their plan has been very good. I mean, even when I was working with a presidential candidate who had no skeletons in his closet at all, the only thing they could do was turn his microphone off, turn the cameras off. But
and they can do that remotely. Yes, I understand.
yes, and I asked him. I said, "Well, Charles, you're not going to win because nobody knows about you. What are you going to do afterwards?" He chose not to do anything. He was already kind of retired anyway, and he was wealthy, so he didn't have to worry about making a living. But I think he threw away an opportunity because he had the recognition. If we'd continued to work together and promote the magazine that promoted him as president, we would have been better off. And I mean, they even drove my family off. You know, you need to get long-term care. You need to get guardianship. You need to do this. You need to make sure he takes his medication. And my wife told me, well, Clay, they saved you. The doctors saved your life. I had 3 broken ribs and a bump on the head. They didn't save my life. They tried to kill me. So, you know, she was from a political party, family background, and her father was a Secretary of Agriculture under Kennedy, who got involved with Billy Saul Estes, and when he ran into me, I realized that he was not exactly the most honest guy, and I told him, you know, hey, I'll never do business with you again, but, you know, if you want to be a grandfather and you want to be a father to your daughter and a grandfather to your grandchildren, you know, just don't try to take anything from me. And after the accident, he told her if she went back to me, he would disown her. So I lost my wife and family after the accident. But I guess
that can happen.
You know, so it's I think, you know, when I look back at the history, my history, I mean, I don't think I've done anything wrong. I think I have been guided by the most intelligent force in the universe, the force that holds the atoms together. I don't think God looks anything like Charlton Heston. You know? I think he's the force that holds the...
you know, I feel...
Yes, ma'am, what?
And I feel that I listen to him. So I love the self-reflect. I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing this because this is what I'm being told to do.
I agree. I think this is
and
what
I am happy to have that happen. I affirm it's more important.
Do you have an article that you can get me about what you're doing so I can put it in my 2014, January 1st, 2014 issue? I've anything that you suggest
I would write
there?
one. I basically tell people every doing because they go, you can't do that, Melinda. Nobody can do that. Nobody does. So when I say, what's your ideas? And It's like puppies. You want somebody to adopt the puppy and love the puppy and make the puppy be a happy dog kitty. And that's, as long as it happens, I don't know why. It's, again, my take these tools and use them. That works.
You now have your links to your site. If you send me an email or get me on Skype and we can communicate by Skype. Send me some more your other websites on here, and I'll link those up on the Free American. And
great, I'll be happy to do that.
If you can let people know that come to your website about my shop.freeamerican.com. I've got 3 books up there.
I will. We exchange links.
Yes, ma'am. We've got yours up there.
Absolutely.
This radio show, you can give the RSS feeds. If your site hasn't been blocked in libraries and you can let people know about this, then we've got that's half of my battle right now, getting enough people aware of this radio show, of the guests that we've got. I mean, we just had I just had a whistleblower from the World Bank. You know, she's trying to expose corruption in the World Bank, got fired from the World Bank. She's an attorney. I've had her up, and I've had, well, you can go to my archives page and click on the name of any of my guests, and we've had, I like to say that I interview the most intelligent people in the world, all over the world, and I've been doing it for a long time. So it's, I think what we're doing is right. I think what you're doing is right. And this, let's talk a little bit more about the subject material of your website, about these drones. Now, they've got drones here. They're selling them to police departments, sheriff's departments.
Well, yes, and here that's locally, you know, within the United States, they are starting to sell them because they see a huge potential market for that. And I would have no problem with the use of the technology of drones if there was an accountability. But the fact is they don't want any accountability. And if you don't want the accountability, then you shouldn't be doing it, because there's a problem. If people aren't going to be accountable for all of their actions, you look to the people that they can.
Again, that's what
people who are, I will have to change.
That's one of the things that J.B. Campbell was talking about, this American Defense Party. You know, accountability. Talking about civilian police review boards. I mean, we should be the same review boards, the same neighborhood watch. We ought to be taking care of our veterans and incorporating them into our daily lives, into our neighborhoods. So
we need to take care of. We need to definitely take care of people who, even if what they did really was being done for the corporations and not for us, we need to take care of them because they were doubly betrayed. I know you must feel that way as a Vietnam vet. Well, Vietnam era vet.
Yes, ma'am.
Because when you take a look at what people thought was happening, and it was nothing of the kind. I think that the way that we're interacting today with veterans in many ways is more harmful because at least Vietnam veterans understood that the American people really didn't approve of what had happened over there. And now they're getting a consistent message, at least from people who are really trying to do the right thing by them and tell them they appreciate their willingness to serve, that they're not seeing, in nearly large enough numbers, that what they were doing was serving the corporations. And that's something that we need to get. We absolutely, Americans, veterans and otherwise, need to know that. I mean, I just not even a half an hour ago, it was right before the show started, I was talking to a vet and said, have you read Smedley Butler's book? And he was a former Marine, and he'd never read it. He'd never heard of Smedley Butler.
Well, our founding father, Thomas Jefferson, said if you ever...
And it's equally true today.
Thomas Jefferson said if you allow a private bank to issue your money, the banks and the corporations that spring up around them will leave your children homeless in the land that we conquered. That's exactly where we are today, and that's exactly what we need to make people aware of. This isn't, this isn't a matter of black versus white. I don't care whether you're. If you want to go beat your head against that wailing wall and knock yourself out, I'll watch. If you want to get on your hands and knees and stick your nose in the dirt, and your ass up in the air, I'll try to keep St. Bernard off of you if I'm in the neighborhood. And if you want to get on your hands and knees and pray for a Cadillac, I'll put in a good word with God. Maybe you won't drop it on top of your ass. The Constitution takes care. You can worship any way you want. You want to hug a tree? I got a pair of tweezers here. We can pull the splinters out. But don't try to make me do what you do. It's
that's the point of freedom. You don't. Other people do what they want, and you do what you want, and then it works for all of us. Well,
I can tell you this. I appreciate what you're doing, and these drones are a problem now. I believe
they're a hideous problem because Americans are becoming used to the idea that people are being blown up in other countries, and it's dehumanizing those people to them. It's like it isn't real, and you can see when it starts happening here, and it will, you can rest assured because they will be used that way. It's only barely starting now, but that certainly is clearly their intention. Then what do we say, and who do we ask for help? Because the rest of the world is going to look at us and say, "See, we told you."
Well, we just had a case here.
They pre-exist the Constitution.
We just had a case here, right here in Texas, of a fertilizer plant that was suing Monsanto, having some kind of run-in with Monsanto, and they got blown up. I believe that was a drone used to blow them up. And again,
that's actually my editor. Was near Waco. Yeah.
Yes.
And my editor actually heard the explosion.
It's this is and we've got other sources like Michael Hastings, who was doing a story for Rolling Stone, and his car got blown up. Mercedes don't just blow up. I'm sorry, folks, they don't happen. Don't happen like that.
Well, that doesn't look like. It looks like they were using GPS, not a drone.
Could have been either way,
But they thought that they probably had planted something in the car, or taken control of its system, since it was highly computerized, as I remember. That's the one that's in Hollywood, right?
Yes. Yes. We just had another one, another actor from Fast and Furious get taken down, but that may have been a whole false flag operation too. We don't know for sure. We don't even know if he was killed in it. So
and try using a FOIA, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to tell you anything.
The information keeps coming out. Now, I've also kind of had the opinion that we may have been in Armageddon for the last 100 years, but the press just didn't tell us. We've had more people in this last century killed.
The media is not working for us. It's working for the corporations. It has been since at least the 20s. Edward Bernays,
Yes, ma'am, Edward Bernays.
BBS just did a special, a whole series on Edward Bernays. So it's hitting the mainstream.
Yeah, got you. That made it okay for you to smoke and kill yourself with cigarettes. And by the way,
That's right.
that's one of my favorite things. 50 people a year die of overdose of aspirin. Nobody's ever died of smoking pot. So, and
Yes.
hundreds
Not
of
just smoking pot. I mean, you could smoke pot and then do something that, perhaps if your balance isn't good, that could cause you harm. But it's people who are smoking pot are generally laying around. They're not doing something vigorous, shall we say, or driving a car.
or going out and starting barroom brawls. It just don't happen. I mean, alcohol is certainly more of a problem, I think, than smoking pot. And now we've got other countries out there that are stepping forward. Hungary and Iceland is going against the bank. Why we can do that here? I believe we can do that here. It's
Well, I know we can, and we're going to.
that's certainly one of my main goals, and I appreciate everything that you're doing. And let me tell you on the air here that I'll do anything I can to help you. Anything that we can do to work together, anything we can do beneficial, you know, that's good for the people. And if it's good for me and my children, it's going to be good for my neighbor and their children.
Amen.
We've
And they can be. I want to see them live the life they want to live. It's their choice, and affirms whatever their journey to God is, which they will not be mine. But that's okay. I don't care.
my again, I don't care whether you're Methodist or Baptist. I don't care whether you're Catholic or a Muslim. We've got that. Our Bill of Rights takes care of that. You want to.
That's right.
And to me, that's the most important part. If you want, why argue about something? We don't have to argue about this. We don't have to oppose each other. We can work together. And I don't care what you do or who you do it with in the privacy of your home. So we don't have to argue over homosexuality. We don't have to argue over religion. Do what you want. Just don't try to force it onto someone else.
And don't scare the horses.
It's go ahead and give out some more of your information on your other sites. And
okay.
And then
you'll
send it to me. I'm going to give the floor to you so I can go out and check on see how my roof's coming along here. I'm going to give you the floor.
Yes, you definitely. Then you give us a report when you get back, okay?
We got he's moving the ladder here, so I gotta go check on that. But you've got the floor here. We've got 20 minutes on this, and Dave will is there for you if you got a problem here. I can hear you from outside. I'll be right back. Go ahead.
Okay, goodbye for now. Hi guys.
I'm here. I can still hear you.
My first blog was How the Neocons Stole Freedom, and I used this as a way to talk about those bad, nasty neocons starting in about 2005, and there it is. I mean, you can go and you can see it. And, I don't post there as much as I used to, but it's definitely How the Neocons Stole Freedom.blogspot.com. And I talked about people like John Fund and the Bushes and the Kochs. I outed the Kochs rather thoroughly. As a matter of fact, I had other mainstream type journalists contact me and say, hey, could you tell me more about that? And I would. And I had people who were whistleblowers who absolutely did not want me to use their names and had went through all different sorts of interesting methods to have it not look like they were contacting me even because they were scared, to tell me about some of the people who were sort of under discussion, including the Kochs. And then I wrote a book in 2004, and it's called Greed, the Neo-Conning of America. And you could go buy it on Amazon. But probably the better way to get it is you can go to greedtheneoconningofamerica.blogspot.com, and you can just read it online. And it's highly autobiographical. I have to tell you, I changed my name, I changed all of the names. But if you go back and you take a look at the list, you go, oh my gosh, that's who she's talking about. And the point was I wanted people to see what was really going on as opposed to what they thought was going on. And I could say this as well, but through one cause or another, because I thought I had somebody lined up to do the publicity, but that's okay, because it did get out there enough, and there are actually quite a few people who linked to specific chapters online, because they would say, oh my God, this is really what was going on there, and we didn't understand it. And I found that very useful, because one of the reasons I've done this is because I feel a very strong mission to get certain things taken care of, like all of it. You know, we have all of these problems with foreclosures and the mortgage system, and there is another side, and that I'd really like you to go take a look at, and that's homeownersjustice.com.
Homeownersjustice.com
is about how you can save your home at the same time that you save America. These are very much linked. They're trying to steal our homes, as we said earlier. This is so, they will control us and where we live. We'll be renters instead of owners. There's a huge difference between those two things. And there are ways to do it, but it has to happen in a certain way. It has to happen all over the country, using the things that really work, because there are far too many attorneys out there who are sort of good. But and they do it, but they really know what they're doing.
Well, I just ran a...
They need to actually make it work. And one of the work is on... Hi, how's the roof?
Well, it's coming along. It's got a few holes in it, but he's putting up sealant and filling the holes up, so it's coming along fine. It's coming along fine.
That's good. So you were saying?
Hold on a minute. Go ahead. Hello, Walter.
Okay, so if you go to Homeowners Justice, one of the articles that I want you to read is called "The Foreclosure Meltdown Was Planned." A whistleblower speaks out, because there is a gentleman. He was actually an attorney and an associate who was at Cadwalader, Wickersham, and Taft in 1994, when they were planning the first securitized derivative, doing the registration to the SEC. And it took him about 6 weeks coming in to look at it and said, what you guys are doing is illegal. It is not appropriate, and you should not be doing it. And then we're going to write them 500-page analyses of exactly why it was illegal, why they shouldn't do this. And they decided they didn't like him, and they went after him. First, they gave him $50,000 away, and then they went after him in a fishy number of ways, which for a long time he couldn't figure out what was going on, because his life had always been rather smooth until then. And then he realized that he must have done something to make him very, very, very unhappy. And so I heard the story, and we did this article about it, and it gets in, it's about 14 pages, I'm warning you. But it does give you a lot of the details. And what you're going to get in the next one, because this is going to be sort of a punctuated series, is going to be the information that links the Bank of New York and CWT, Codweiler, Wickersham, and Taft, who have been working together, brace yourself, for about 230 years, working very diligently on exactly the same agenda. Now, of course, that probably doesn't surprise you because you're listening to the show and you forgot the agenda, and their agenda is everything that is not good for us. But when you read the article and you start to get it, then you get it. And you know what happens, that moment of illumination. All of a sudden, and now I get it, and I can't possibly not get it now. But all of them, the other little pieces of the puzzle start kind of going click, 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 click. And that's the moment we're looking for, isn't it? For America, we want the moment of illumination when the 60% who really sort of decide what's going to happen go, oh no, and they start to move. Because when that happens, it will be a tsunami that will be literally irresistible and will change things rapidly. And this goes to something that has been observed in this kind of behavior, which is punctuated evolution. Evolution can also happen to behavior. And in social behavior, when people suddenly realize it, boom, all of a sudden, you're talking in a very short period of time, things are different. And adoptions take place this way. A lot of people thought it was going to be generations before people were, really had accepted and were going to be using automobiles, for instance. How long was it? It was, still a rich person's luxury in about 1911. And by 1923, it was like everybody. And that's an enormously rapid changeover for a form of transportation that had been accepted as the standard, because horse and buggy was accepted as the standard before then, in that short of period of time. So we need to keep in mind that that is what is going to happen. They, and the other side, they know that they are up against that sort of characterization and that sort of power, which is one of the reasons they have worked so diligently and so hard to keep us under control, because they know once it starts, they're not going to be able to do anything about it. They won't be able to stop it. And because these people are very much students of human action, human behavior, and the adoption of new paradigms. Because once people see the advantages and the power of freedom, once it's demonstrated in their lives, they've made a choice. They've got chickens in the backyard. They're growing. They have a house that, they're never going to have to worry about making any changes whatsoever. They're not going to have to spend money on maintenance. They don't spend any money on gasoline for a car that is going to last them for their entire lifetime. And we're right there, right now. We can give you that. When that happens, all of a sudden, the world changes because people realize what it would be like to be free of that horrible monthly, weekly, daily burden of having to spend money just to survive, that you have to go someplace else and spend. What we want for everybody is for them to be able to take the dreams that they want to live, the things that really matter to them, the deepening of relationships, the finding out about the world around them, the simple moments of joy. Go into the backyard and you pick up a couple of nice fresh eggs and you make yourself an omelet in the morning without any sense of anxiety or being rushed. Now that is a wonderful world. It's a world that it's worthwhile working for. It's a world that it's worthwhile just, spending the time and energy to make come into existence. It's a world where we are very present with each other, where we care about each other, and where we rebuild the whole sense of community that our ancestors took for granted. Of course they knew everybody. Of course they knew who they could trust. Of course they knew who they couldn't trust too, didn't they?
Yes.
And it's sort of, I call it the lawnmower syndrome. Of course they didn't have lawnmowers, but they had something else. And they knew that there were people that they couldn't trust, and they didn't. And unfortunately, that's one of the things that we've lost, because there are so many people out there that we don't really know at all, that we find ourselves trusting people who aren't worthy of our trust. And the ability to say, no, we're not going to trust them, no, we're going to live differently, is a gift that will reduce the costs that are being extracted from us in so many different ways. Just for a moment, think about the costs that are being extracted from the psychopaths. That cost is estimated at, brace yourself, about $460 billion just in America every year. Think about that. How different would our lives be if we weren't suffering the losses caused by people who are simply not worthy of our trust, people who we should be able to hold accountable for what they do and marginalize them so that they can't continue to extract these costs from us. And that's another thing that will happen. Transparency, understanding who you're really dealing with, being on that basis at a local level, makes an enormous amount of differences in ways that perhaps we don't even think about, because it's, we didn't really know 20 years ago. We didn't really know that it was a neurological issue. We didn't know why it happened. And there's so many things today that we're discovering that, again, are going to be a basis for a new understanding of freedom and what it is to be human and what it is to be in community with each other. And every step along the way brings with it a new empowerment of who and what humanity is and why loving one another is so very important. Loving one another, being there for each other, caring for each other. And these are things that, they're right there. It's right there. If you put out your hand to grasp it, you can touch it. And that's open to you every day.
Are you there? Yes, ma'am. I'm right here. I'm right here. Now, I love everything that you were saying. I listened to every word. And it just kind of hit me. One of the things that you were talking about is something I wrote about in a science fiction novel 45 years ago. And that was that I envisioned a society that had eliminated planned obsolescence.
Yes.
And they in my society they built ships that lasted for 1,000 years. They had vehicles that lasted for 1,000 years. Vehicles that didn't depend on fossil fuel, didn't depend on gasoline. I said that's kind of the reason, probably the reason, that the UFO phenomenon is so top secret, because they don't want you, the government don't want you to know that we could go to the moon and be back in time for dinner without using a drop of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah.
That's
they don't want you to know, because knowledge is power.
That's right. That's right. And these people working together. I mean, I've trusted a lot of people. I had a lot of people come through my life, and many of them just couldn't be trusted, But I raised my children in a small town, and everybody knew who they were, and I knew who everybody was. And they had a pretty happy and safe childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we can do that again. I think we can expand that so that we actually look out for everybody. I lived in Miami for 8 years, and I think I only met 2 of my neighbors. I think that's a shame. I think that I was wrong in doing it that way. I should have been out talking to all of the neighbors and getting to know them, so I would know who I could trust and who I couldn't. But it's
That's right.
it's hard to change that. But again, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm going to be concentrated this next year on my fiction, because I can paint a picture with fiction that may resonate with people.
I'm sure it will. From what you said, you were writing fiction, a generation ago, right? That I'm sure it resonated with people.
All right, I'm going to be looking for your connection, Free American 6'9" on this. We're out of time. Melinda, thank you very much for being with me, and I want to invite you back probably after the first of the year.
That sounds lovely. Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it very much, and I'm glad the work is okay.
Thank you. I appreciate everything you're doing. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Okay. God bless. Bye.